What's up, everybody? Ultimate Weenie here, and I'm feeling a little nostalgic about killing Nazis. You see, at one point in time, killing Nazis was just the thing to do in gaming. In fact, it was so much of the thing to do that they made a fucking fantastic game back in the day called Castle Wolfenstein, which later evolved into Wolfenstein 3D in 1992. It was by id Software, and Bethesda kind of has the rights to the whole franchise, and they decided to do a little revival in 2009, I believe. But I didn't really pay much attention to the 2009 revival. What really got on my radar was Wolfenstein: The New Order. And what Wolfenstein: The New Order is about is what if Nazi Germany won, and it takes this scenario, and you, the player, are in the role of B.J. Blazkowicz. And oh my gosh, I've slept on this game for too damn long. It's now 2025, and I'm feeling the need to kill some Nazis, so I did a little dive into the game. I felt like it was the time to do it, and I had a free weekend, so I loaded it up. It was cheap enough, and I'd set to play in it. Now, it was developed by Machine Games and published by Bethesda as well. It was kind of a soft reboot of the Wolfenstein franchise, and it just continued the story of BJ Blazkowicz. It kind of blends that super fast FPS gameplay, and it had a really surprisingly deep and emotional narrative. And this alternate history, it does a little bit of a time skip, and where it's 1960 and Nazis have full blown just taken over the world. One of the best things about Machine Games, and I didn't really realize this until doing a little research, was that they also made the Chronicles of Riddick Escape from Butcher Bay, which might be a little bit of a hidden gem. I don't know about anyone else, but I was a huge fan of the Chronicles of Riddick series, and I did get to play this game, fortunately, but one of their other games is called The Darkness, which, if you've never played The Darkness, I played it on Xbox 360, and it is a fantastic little hidden gem. It's a series that I really hope to touch on further down the line, but today I want to keep this focused on Wolfenstein. Like I said, they started in 1981 with Wolfenstein 3D, and then FPS kind of took off when they made Wolfenstein 3D. And they made a return to Castle Wolfenstein in 2001, and then tried to reboot the series in 2009 with Wolfenstein, but it really didn't take off. Now, what happened was Machine Games, they took everything in a new direction. It was darker, it was grittier, it was one of those things that just they felt the need to tell a story. It was no longer about mindlessly killing Nazis. It was about the implications, the darkness within the main character. It was just a total revitalization of the series. It starts in 1946, and BJ is with his unit, and he's launching a last-ditch assault on General Deathshed's fortress. It doesn't really go right, and BJ gets severely injured. He falls into a 14-year-old coma, and he's stored away in a Polish asylum. You get to see kind of time lapses in between where BJ has glimpsing moments of clarity, and then it kind of just fades off, and then 14 years later there's some shit going down. The Nazis have they've decided to get a little bit more aggressive, and they're just hurting everybody around. They're not taking any prisoners. They've started shooting the doctors, the nurses, the patients. They've gone full blown psychopath at this moment, and it reactivates something in BJ Blazkowicz. And this is where the story starts. It gets super interesting. They kind of go on this entire campaign where it's a centralized rebellion, and the characters, the story, the setting is just beautiful. The way that they show the world is this dark dystopian setting, of course, but within the characters that you get to meet and be a part of this group, this resistance, you see these glittering moments of hope and humanity, and it deals with themes of resistance, loss, trauma, and perseverance, and is surprisingly emotional for a Wolfenstein game. I mean, in the past with the previous iterations, it was kind of lighthearted, like, oh, Nazis, point your gun at them and shoot. And it didn't really have that deep, impactful storytelling. What they did with this game is they really wanted to tell a deep and meaningful story while also keeping the fun that is killing Nazis, because everybody likes to have a blast. And a blast is certainly what you can have with BJ Blazko. I'm not even going to try to pull that joke off, but let's get into the characters a little bit. BJ Blazkowicz, he's a hardened American soldier, and he has emotional layers like we had never seen before in the games. He no longer is that one-liner action hero. He struggles with loss, trauma, duty, and his actions throughout the game, his monologues, his thoughts. It adds significant layers to what you're doing. Um, we also have some other characters. Anya Aliwa. She's a Polish nurse who cares for BJ during his coma. She loses her parents when the Nazis come and shut down the asylum. And by shut down, I mean absolutely gutter fuck everybody in the entire place. But she becomes a key resistance member. She's an intelligent, strong-willed character, and she doesn't feel like she's only there to be a love interest. She actually has value to the story, and that's one of the great things. There was also a side character relating to Anya. I believe it was a nurse that worked with her, or maybe a relative of hers. But they have these audio logs that kind of come towards the end of the game, and it's just the character work with those two is just beautiful. The diary entries and the recordings is just it's an act of storytelling that's unrivaled. I think in this game is those significant little moments and pieces put together. We also have some other characters like Fergus Reed and Wyatt. Fergus, he's a Scottish veteran, but he's I didn't get to experience Fergus, and here's why. The entire game has two paths that you can take. You can either pick Fergus to live, or you can pick Wyatt. I saw Fergus as an older gentleman, and Wyatt was a young soldier. At the time, you have to pick who lives and who dies. This is a command from Deathshed himself, and he makes you pick. And this is the catalyst to the game. This is the one path that you pick that will influence the rest of the levels. And I did not know particularly the implications behind which character you picked, but my decision process behind it was Wyatt was young, and I didn't want to kill him. He didn't live his life yet. This was a significant part of my journey through the game, because later on the story changes depending on who you pick. Wyatt, since he's so young and inexperienced, when you meet up with him later, he's suffering from PTSD, self-doubt, hatred. He's struggling under the pressure of leadership. And it's one of those things that's like, oh my God, I'm the one that chose for this kid to live, and the trauma that he's dealing with is because of me. It was a clear and impactful moment in gaming that I haven't really felt from an FPS in a very long time. It felt like my actions had consequences and weight to them. I know there is some people out there that do they recommend Fergus over Wyatt to pick, because one, he's Scottish, he's funny, he's sarcastic, battle hardened, and a lot of people, kind of metagame it, because Fergus gives you health power-ups, whereas Wyatt kind of gives you armor power-ups. I didn't think anything of it at the time. My choice was solely at the discretion of who I thought should live, and I wanted to give Wyatt a chance, if not anything, but because I knew that Fergus had lived his life, and I wasn't weighing on Wyatt, and I didn't realize that would be the catalyst that causes his trauma, his PTSD, his self-doubt. I just didn't realize at the time, and it sucked. It sucked, but it felt meaningful. Other resistance members are a key part to the rest of the story. You have different people. Caroline Becker, she's wheelchair bound and she's the leader of the resistance. And she's kind of living in the center of Germany and Berlin and running the resistance operation. Along with her, you have Max Haas, which is a wonderful character. He's a gentle giant and he has like limited speech, but he has crazy strength and he doesn't like to fight. He's just one of those big, gentle giant guys that just doesn't want to hurt anybody, but he has a good heart. Other people that you can recruit, such as Set Roth, he's a Jewish scientist that is captured by the Nazis and held in a concentration camp, but you eventually are able to rescue him and have these brilliant scientific discoveries at your fingertips. There's a lot more other characters in the Resistance that definitely are worth taking. I just don't want to spoil too much of the story. In case you haven't played this 11-year-old game, I'm not going to judge you. I know that I took my time playing it, but I just don't want to spoil everything. But it's it's definitely a game to pick up. Now, to talk about the villains, there's two major villains in it. There's General Wilhelm Strauss, which is Death's Head. He's the main antagonist. He's a Nazi scientist that conducts horrific experiments. He's cold, calculating, and completely devoid of empathy. And he is a complete asshole. But, and here's the but, I didn't find myself hating him as much as another one of the evil characters, Frau Engel. Frau Engel, you run into her on this train segment, and immediately I can just automatically hate this bitch's guts. I'm telling you, I fucking loathed her. I despised her guts from the moment I sat in front of her. All I wanted to do was pull the trigger. I wanted to see her head pop. This bitch is one of the most hateable characters in games that I have ever dealt with in my entire life. I don't like her. I'll leave it at that. There's some crazy scenes with her that I just don't want to spoil, but she is terrible. I fucking hate her. You can put that on my tombstone. Ultimate Weenie hates Frau Engel. Bottom line. But other than that, there's other characters that just really have high impact, and you can tell that characters are a focus of the game. You can tell that the relationships between the characters, it's one of those it's one of those situations where you have this complex story going on between the characters in between these missions, and it just makes you feel more connected to the cast that you're surrounded while you play this game. Let's get on to the gameplay. The combat is actually super fun. It's got that fast-paced FPS action, inspired a bunch of the old school shooters, and it kept kind of true to the form of the original Wolfenstein games, where it's run and gun, blow stuff up. The weapons feel great. They're impactful. It's brutal, and it just feels good to play. That being said, the difficulty can get a little high. Like it's definitely very hectic, and I'm not gonna lie, I struggled at some points in the game. There was moments where I was definitely hitting that checkpoint more often than not. But that being said, it is rewarding. They do have multiple kind of play styles, depending on what type of guns you like to use. Also, it does have stealth options, so if you were one of those sneaky little rats that like to kill Nazis from different multiple angles, pop up from the vents, stab them in the back, throw knives, crack their skulls, whatever you want to do, there's a Nazi killing method for everybody. Now, one of my complaints about it, because I'm not all praise, I'm not just going to praise all the good and just ignore the bad. The levels were great and all, but it did feel like the interactions with the levels and the way that the levels were laid out, you could really confuse the AI and cheese some scenarios. Like, the AI was not smart at all. And you could kind of abuse that by using the level design. As good as I liked it, it's just it was just one of those things. It's like, oh, now I can cheese it, and I tried to mentally stop myself from cheesing it, but there were some fights that were so brutal. It's like, oh fuck, I'm gonna start cheesing. Call me a rat because I'm about to start cheesing. It's definitely one of those things that could be touched up on, but from what they had and what they were doing with the game, it definitely isn't necessarily game breaking. It's just certain segments were easier than others because of the level design. I will say that finding the hidden paths and secrets was great. It was definitely a throwback to classic FPS games. That was one of the things that I used to love back in the day, was just finding all the hidden shit all around the maps, and the special weapons that you can find ahead of time. You could also upgrade your guns and stuff too, which really felt nice, and it kind of kept the gameplay fresh. I could, talk about the sound design. I'm going to be honest. The guns sound good. The sound effects were great. The the bodies exploding had a very visceral feel to it. The music I can't talk about, and the reason is I didn't. I turned the music off. All right, I didn't. I don't know if it's good music or not. Maybe it is, maybe it's not, maybe that's your thing, but from my point of view, I turned the music off because I was, at the time, I was also listening to like Rage Against the Machine, and I felt like that was just fun for me. Okay, so I turned the music off and I replaced it with my own. It didn't really affect anything else other than, I didn't have the OG soundtrack, so I'm not going to touch about it. Could be good, could be bad, I don't know. But otherwise, the sounds in the game, it really sounded good. So no complaints from me on that line. All right, let's get into the graphics. The graphics, it was pretty decent for a game of its time. It, like, keep in mind it was made in 2011, and so it had like that standard PS4 graphics that was good at the time, but if you're coming at it from a modern gaming perspective, you might take a little issue with it. I, for one, I don't have that problem. Like, I don't mind games looking a little dated. I'm a big retro enthusiast, so to me, the graphics were passable, and it didn't really take away from it at all. As far as the voice acting goes, everyone in the cast pretty much nailed it. The voice actor for B.J. Blazkowicz, I believe it was Brian Bloom, definitely delivered some awesome, gritty, dark, ominous one-liners and these monologues. They definitely felt the tone of what was happening. You felt the weight and the impact of what was happening to BJ, and I just really appreciate his voice acting for really bringing in the immersion. It felt like a war torn hero. It felt like a hero that was at ends and just trying his damnness to save what was left of what the United States that he knew. And it felt good being in his shoes, and I mourn for the optimist that he once was, and to compare that to the war torn veteran that he is at the end of this, the one that persevered throughout everything, the one that pushed through the darkness and really just solidified standing up for what you believe in. It felt good, and he did an awesome job. If you're liking this review, by the way, I'm Ultimate Weenie, and I'm doing this YouTube thing. If you could, give me a little subscribe, a little bit of like. I'll appreciate it. I'll give you a forehead kiss or something. That'll help me out a ton. Also, if you've played the game or you're planning on picking up the game, I picked it up for $4. Let me know in the comments how you like it, or how you liked it, or if you're going to play it again. But to summarize everything, it's a awesome return to killing Nazis. Honestly, I'm really glad that I picked this up 11 years down the road. It felt good to play. It's not too long. It's not drawn out. It's fast. It's impactful, and it just feels good. The characters are well developed. The story is awesome. It's satisfying to play with that old school kind of first person shooter combat, and the level design and stealth and action. It just all ties together to make a pretty solid game. Overall, I'd say I'd rate it a good 8.5 out of 10. I've started playing the Wolfenstein The Old Blood, I think is what it's called. It's like a prequel to it, and it's not nearly as fun as this one in the New Order. It I don't know if it's just I got off the rhythm or something, but I'm going to see if I can power through it. But I'd highly recommend the New Order. It's a fantastic game. Most of the time, it can be picked up for under $5. So I think if you're not playing it, you're missing out on a truly awesome game. Thank you for listening to me rant about this game. Sorry if I stutter or whatever. That's I'm trying not to. I'm trying to work on my speech, but I'm getting the hang of it. So like I said, if you want to support me, hit that subscribe button. But I appreciate you either way for taking your time to watch this. Hope you have a good night.